One of these watches is over $20,000 retail, $35K on the secondary market, and the other is only $650. Can you tell which one is which? Probably, unless you're watching this video at 144p. But does this apparent difference warrant one to be 33 times more expensive, or conversely only 30% of the cost of the other? I think so. So here is Tissot's attempt to milk, or rather bank, on the trend started by this dude, our boy Gigi. And although not designed by our photogenic friend over here, the Tissot PRX Powermatic 80 clearly has design cues from that 70s wave, the birth of steel sports watches on integrated bracelets. And it can't be any more obvious that the PRX is trying to lean more towards the Royal Oak. But ignoring design for now, in terms of build construction, I think this is a very well-rounded watch. I think we all now sort of expect sports watches in 2021 to have features like a sapphire crystal, robust movement, and some degree of water resistance, especially with all the insane microbands coming out. So no real surprise when you take a look at the PRX specs. This allows us to focus on what this watch is and what makes it stand out amongst its $1,000 competitors. To start, as someone who wears a steel sports watch on an integrated bracelet almost daily, I can't stress enough how comfortable these types of watches are. I can't explain exactly why, but imagine putting on a bucket hat with those drawstrings that keep it in place versus putting on a motorbike helmet. They both stay on your head, but the motorbike helmet will feel more well put together like an integrated bracelet since it's a single entity, integrated. But there is a caveat. The dimensions have to fit your head perfectly, or in our case wrist size, and there's little to no room around this. If the watch is too big for you, it literally feels like wearing a helmet that's 2 or 3 sizes too large. So something to consider, most integrated bracelets have end links that protrude out, making the lug-to-lug distance much longer than traditional watches. The PRX is 40mm in diameter, but actually feels like a 42 or 43 watch on wrist. Interestingly, it looks smaller like a 38mm size, but that's only because the dial takes up a small portion of the space with respect to the rest of the case. So if you have anything under a 7-inch wrist, the PRXs will probably wear large and might not be as comfortable. Luckily, the bracelet does taper and the individual links are relatively small, so you should be able to size it regardless of wrist size. But like most integrated bracelets, there is no micro adjust. So again, size is super important and less forgiving for these type of watches. Now what's powering all of this is the Swiss Automatic Powermatic 80.111 movement. It's been running only a few seconds off per day, so surprisingly accurate, but I believe these calibers are regulated by Tissot. In the end, it's just a modified ETA, so don't let the fancy name trick you, and it's not decorated at all, so there's nothing much to look at. To be fair, it's only $650, so all I hope for is reliability. Now let's see what this watch is carefully trying to copy basically. I mean, there's no argument here. What else is that dial trying to be? Here is my Royal Oak, and this is the 37mm variant. The more comparable model to the PRX would be the 15500 ST at 41mm and 51 lug to lug, but with my 6.5-inch wrist, you can see why I went for the smaller size. So how much of the Royal Oak experience does the PRX Powermatic 80 provide? Honestly, if you took off the dial and replaced it with one without the tapestry or waffle texture like the quartz versions, I don't think it wears or looks like a Royal Oak in particular. I have extensive experience with the Royal Oak since it's worn basically 5 out of 7 days of the week, and to my eyes, the PRX more resembles a vintage Omega Seamaster reference 1660216. The PRX case lacks the sharp angular cuts that basically defines a Royal Oak, and as a result, the lugs have more exposed surface area. So the profile is much flatter, visually and physically, especially because the lugs don't angle down as steep, and a lot curvier like a tonneau shape. Funny enough, the case actually looks a lot more like the Overseas. But because the PRX has that tapestry dial, it is compared to the Royal Oak, which is a shame because there's no need for this watch to borrow design cues. By that I mean, the PRX has so much going for it that the tapestry texture kind of makes the watch feel a bit tacky or gimmicky. But of course, it's obvious why Tissot went for this style, again to ride that Royal Oak train, but I would have much preferred if the PRX had its own texture like a metallic vertical satin graining. Something different to allow the PRX to be its own category opposed to being grouped up as another Royal Oak homage. So if you're looking for a watch that will give you specifically a Royal Oak experience, the PRX Powermatic 80 does not deliver. It's just a dial that's similar, and the rest, not really. The PRX merely provides a general sense of what it's like to wear a steel sports watch on an integrated bracelet through its own own merits. But that's not to say that the PRX is a bad watch. There's not that many watches that can grant you this experience for under $8,000. The finishing is clean and interesting with its combination of brushed surfaces and polished chamfers. The bracelet is comfortable with a lot of removable links. The crystal is sapphire with AR coating, and the movement has been quite reliable. So if you look at the PRX for what it is, throwing out any Royal Oak expectations, I think you'll be quite happy with it. Now, one detail that I would have liked to see, keeping in mind that I don't expect much for its price, is the chamfers found on the case to have continued onto the bracelet so that the two components feel more integrated. I imagine this being an area where costs are saved, but it's always a feature that I've really come to appreciate on my watches. Also, the bracelet has quick release spring bars, yet it's kind of pointless since there aren't any alternate strap options. I'm sure you can get a custom leather or rubber strap made, but aside from that, you're pretty much stuck on the bracelet that Tissot gives you until they release their own line of straps. This is a missed opportunity in my opinion, because with integrated systems, having alternate strap options is really enjoyable. That's one of the key reasons why I love the Overseas. Ultimately, putting these two watches side by side, it's clear what you are paying for when copying up the 20k plus for a Royal Oak. The PRX looks great from afar, but that's where it ends because there's not much to see as you get closer. The Royal Oak looks great from afar, and its beauty continues even further through a macro lens. As expected, the Royal Oak is nicer without question, and I know it's ridiculous to objectively compare these two watches from a quality standpoint, but from a value perspective, opinions will vary. I believe the Royal Oak is worth every single penny, at retail that is, but the PRX has its own set of merits to be appreciated, and it's actually accessible for one thing. That's the most important thing, I guess. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing if you haven't already. Massive thanks to Ricardo over at Watch With Us channel for letting me borrow his PRX. I'll leave a link to his channel down below. Follow me on Instagram at loom_shot, and I'll see you guys in the next video. I promise it won't be 2 months. And Seiko mod videos are being worked on right now, so